This is Metal Mike, and in this episode I'm joined by my Twitter pal Tony Rod, and together we discuss our top 10 metal albums from the epic year of 1985. What a year, man. All the heavy hitters like Kiss, Motley, Wasp, Ratt, they all had output from this year, and we discuss it all. It's a fun blast from the past. Check it out. Tony, welcome to the 80's Glam Metalcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing, all things considered, with all the craziness going on in the world right now, I'm actually doing pretty good.
That's probably a good segue because, the world is crazy right now, so I think we should just go back to 1985, right?
Sounds great to me. Although, to be quite honest, 85 was actually a crazy time for me then, too, so I guess that's just my life. But I poured myself a cool one here, and I'm gonna enjoy my drink, and let's talk some 1985 metal.
Awesome, man. Well, we get to 1985. We're about halfway through the decade. And, metal's still growing, especially as, a commercial force. You know what I mean? I feel like you saw a lot of that in 83 with Metal Health, and then 1984 with Stay Hungry. So, metal's really becoming a force in the commercial side of music. But you notice, though, compared to maybe, at least for me, I noticed, compared to 1987, 1988, there's not as many metal albums out at this point. Did you kind of notice that when you're putting together a list?
Yeah, that's exactly what I noticed. There were actually some albums that I had to put on my list. Well, I didn't have to, but I put them on my list, and I'm really thinking, I really didn't want to have this on my top 10, but, I was surprised that there's actually not a lot. You can get 10 and maybe into 15, but after that, there's actually a lot more that was going on, I think, in 84 and in 86.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree with you.
And as you go into the 80s, there's even, it just exploded, and there's even more stuff to choose from. But, yeah, I'm right there with you, though.
I kind of felt, too, that, most of my favorite bands are on this list, but it's not my favorite albums by them. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Oh, but you know what, man? I say we jump right in. I'm really curious. Let's hear what your number 10 is.
All right, number 10, and this is exactly what I was talking about just a second ago. Is at number 10, and really, I really wanted to punish this band and this album and not really have it on my list, but it just kind of snuck its way on there. And I actually like this album as a whole better than, say, 8 and 9 on my list, but like I said, I felt like they needed to get knocked down a couple of pegs because of some really bad decisions with this album.
Are you afraid of things that gon' pop in life?
But my number 10 is Come Out and Play by Twisted Sister.
Nice. That's a good one, yeah.
You know where I'm going here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm sure you know the album.
Oh, yeah.
I was big into Twisted Sister. I got into them around the time, like everyone else, around the time of Stay Hungry. And I went backwards and bought You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. I got Under the Blade. I was really, really, really into Twisted Sister in around 84, 85. And I'm waiting, and this album comes out. I didn't even know it was coming out. It was one of those experiences where you walk into the record store and you go through the Twisted Sister section, just happen to see something new, and it was like, that was the cool thing back then, was you can go to record stores and get surprised by something like that. There was no internet, so, and a lot of times, you wouldn't even have a release date for something. You would just walk in and see it.
Exactly.
So I bought it, I brought it home, and the first song's great. Title track, it's heavy, it's a banger. AJ Perro's playing at breakneck speed on this one. So you're thinking, okay, we're off to a good start here. Then it goes into Leader of the Pack.
Yep.
And, okay, there are really only 2 songs on this album that I cannot stand. And sure enough, the 2 singles and 2 videos for this album are Leader of the Pack and Be Cruel to Your School. The 2 songs I can't stand on this album.
Oh, yeah, there's some goofiness there, for sure.
Yeah, and sure enough, it's sunk the band. It's sunk the album. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many, and there's other songs they could have released as the first or second single, and Leader of the Pack. I guess from what Dee says, is they used to play this back in their club days, and it used to go over great, and it was a real fan favorite in the New York area. So that was their reasoning for recording it and putting it on this album. Whose brilliant idea it was to put it as the lead single, I have no idea. But they get paid. They get paid good money to be smarter than I am, and or be smarter than we are, Mike. And to be honest, they're not.
Right.
But anyway,
yeah,
it's completely sunk the album. Then for the second single, they come out with "Be Cruel to Your School," which it's got Alice Cooper on it. That's okay. It's not a great song, but it's got Alice Cooper singing. Trading off with Dee. That's okay. But you've got. Maybe it's just me, but Billy Joel, Clarence Clemens, even Brian Setzer. Okay, these are all talented musicians, I'm sure, but they have no business on a Twisted Sister album or any metal album for that matter.
No, not at all.
I mean, it just doesn't work. Now that I got the negatives out of the way, I'm going to go to the positives.
Yeah,
there are some great tunes, I think, on South. Yeah, I Believe in Rock and Roll is a great tune. The Fire Still Burns is a great tune. J.J. French says that should have been the first single. Mm-hmm. And he, to this day, he just he's kicking himself while he's being interviewed that they released Leader of the Pack as the first single. But now, maybe Twisted Sister would have burned out anyway, I don't know, but they certainly they certainly brought it about a lot quicker by releasing the singles that they did for this album. I like it more than most people do. This is usually the album where, a lot of the Twisted Sister, fans kind of jump ship. But for me, I like the album as a whole. What I did is, because I used to always buy albums on vinyl, and I would, as soon as I brought them home, I would transfer them to cassette. I would record them onto cassette. I just skipped those two songs completely off my cassette. And so when I listened to it, it would go from Come Out and Play to You Want What We Got, which is, not the best song, but it's certainly better than Leader of the Pack. And it would just skip, like I said, it would just skip the two songs that I completely hated. And so for me, those are my thoughts on the album are more positive than most people. But because Leader of the Pack was so bad and Be Cruel to Your School was so bad, I felt like I needed to drop them down all the way to number 10. Anyway, I like the album, with all that being said.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't have this one on my list. I love the song Come Out and Play, but that's about where it ends for me. I think there's some okay songs, but for the most part, yeah. If you look back at certain bands' careers, Quiet Riot is another one that comes to mind. Sometimes bands have that huge album, and then they just kind of tank, right? And some bands just keep getting bigger with every album. Motley Crue would be an example where I think, from Too Fast for Love to Dr. Feelgood, it's just, getting bigger and bigger every album. But, Twisted Sister just made some wrong moves. And I remember when I talked to J.J. French, he brought it up that Leader of the Pack was a bad call. Maybe they just got too rich and too unfocused, or I don't know what happened, but yeah, they weren't in tune with their audience at that point, and it just, it didn't work.
Yeah, maybe they were in tune. They were so used to being in tune with their local artists, because it took them so long to get signed, that when they went national and got big, that they just were kind of tone deaf as to what maybe the whole country wanted.
I think you nailed it on that one. But yeah, once again, and I have to stress, I really do love this song, Come Out and Play. I think it's a really good example of Dee's awesome melodies. When you think of the vocal melody of the verses, it's so cool. And even like the pre-chorus is cool. And that's an example of like the songwriting that I love that Dee Snider does. But then like some of the other songs that are on there, I don't know, they don't hit me. Like maybe to the extent that Stay Hungry does. You know what I mean? I feel like they really were on target there. I really like Love Is for Suckers, though. I think there's some cool stuff on that one. So,
I do too.
That's unfortunate.
We're like, I think we were the only two people in the country that like that album.
It's just the way that it is. But for number 10, and I feel like all my guys on this list, they're all heavy hitters. And my number 10 is Bon Jovi, 7800 Fahrenheit. And, you know, it's one of those ones where I feel like it's sandwiched in between two stronger albums. I like the debut better than this one, and I like Slippery When Wet better than this one as well. But I still think it's great. You know, In and Out of Love, The Price of Love, Only Lonely. You know, there's the whole album has great stuff on it. And I love this 80s Jovi sound. And I kind of feel like once you get to Slippery When Wet, maybe New Jersey has a little bit of that, but I just feel like these three albums are kind of like a bookend to like the 80s hair metal Bon Jovi, and then we start to kind of go more, you know, in a pop direction. And don't get me wrong,
Right.
they you know, Bon Jovi can still pack a stadium, and there's a reason why they do that. They can do that. It's because they've evolved. But I think the sad point that I just want to go to is that, you know, if you look at Kiss, you look at Motley Crue, they've always tried to do at least one album that recaptured the old sound. You know what I mean? And Bon Jovi just never has really done that. And now I think they're at a point, especially with maybe the range of his voice currently, that they never really could do something like that now. So it's unfortunate, you know, that this band this 80s hair Bon Jovi kind of went away and never returned. But when you go back and you listen to those first three, I think you know you get a really cool vibe, and it's great stuff.
Well, it's definitely an album of, you know, those albums are definitely from that time, you know, and they really don't, at least from the quotes that I've seen and the interviews that I've seen, it's like John and Richie both kind of, they really like don't like being associated with that scene or that style of music anymore.
Yeah.
They really see themselves as being more of like a blues-based band, and they're really not.
No.
That's really not what they're good at.
No, I agree 100%.
You know, and so they just, you know, they're almost offended, like when they get like asked about, like, you know, or get like associated with that kind of glam metal scene, because they just don't see themselves that way.
Yeah, but they were so good at it. They were the blueprint for it. You know what I mean? When you look at Slippery When Wet,
Oh, yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much everything that followed, you know, used that as a blueprint. So, you know, they're good
Yeah.
at it. They defined the 80s, and it's just, like I said, that's, I guess when I went back and I made my list, I just kind of felt sad. I was like, geez, it's too bad they never really could recapture this kind of vibe ever again. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, that album, we had that album in my house. My oldest brother had it, and, you know, he was kind of like, hey, check out this new band kind of thing. And I listened to it. Bon Jovi was never my thing, and I think a lot of it has to do with just, you know, I'm big into voices. If I like the singer's voice, then I'll pretty much listen to, you know, I can listen to a band and listen. And, you know, if I really like the singer, even if the song's not that great, it's kind of like, I can dig it. You know, I can get into it. And just John's voice never did anything for me.
Yeah, no, I can understand.
You know, it's not to put down their, his talent or anything like that. It's one of those things where it's just not for me.
Totally understand, man.
But I've got some. I'm guessing we probably have a number of the same heavy hitters on our list here. But I'm guessing that some of ours are going to be in different parts of our list.
I'm sure of it. What do you got for 9?
For number 9, and this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. At number 9, I've got Theater of Pain by Motley Crue.
Yeah, all right.
Which I'm guessing you have that higher.
I got it.
I
might. I don't want
to give a spoiler, but
I might. It might be higher, yeah.
but you might have it up there a little higher than 9.
I do.
But, my thinking with this album, and I guess it, just to give you, some perspective of where I'm coming from on this. Figure, I was 12 in 1980. For most of 1985, I was 12 years old. I turned 13 in October of that year. So, and it was summer. I guess it came out in the summer, around June. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't me, or it seemed like we were waiting for like ever for this album to come out.
Right.
Because Vince had his legal issues, and back then, and it was really only 2 years, but back then bands were putting out an album a year. Mm-hmm. It's not like now where it's 5-10 years between an album. Back then, bands put out new albums every year, so you're kind of you got kind of spoiled with that. So figure Shout came out in 83, and then it's not until 85 that we get Theater of Pain. So it's like, and I still love those first 2 Motley Crue albums.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so good. To this day, it's like, I can't really, like, you know, put on those albums and not you have to start kind of rocking out a little bit, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And they're that good. And there's a certain fire to those first two albums. And from day one, when I came, I was so excited, brought home Theater of Pain, put it on the record player, turn it on, and it was just like, even from the first song, it just seemed like that fire that was on their first two albums was just gone.
Uh-huh.
And and I'm listening to it, okay, it's not bad. You know, it's not like you put on, what the hell is this? It's put on, and yeah, it sounds like Motley Crue. I hear Vince, I hear everybody, but it's just like, my take on this album is there are two songs that I love on this album. Louder Than Hell, which I'm glad they changed the title from Hotter Than Hell, because that would have been really lame.
too Kissish.
Yeah, you know, but you weren't influenced by Kiss, right, Nick? Anyway.
No.
Yeah, he can't make up his mind. It's like one day he gives credit to Kiss for stuff, and the next day he's mad at them, and then tries to say, no, we weren't influenced by it. But anyway, Louder Than Hell's great. Tonight We Need a Lover is great on Start Off Side 2.
Yeah.
There are two songs I love. There are about, I guess, two songs that I absolutely can't stand, and the rest of it's just kind of there. Mm-hmm. You know, the rest of it's just kind of okay. You know, so really, I don't think it's a bad album, but it was such a come down from the first two albums that I thought were just A+. You know, and so that was how I felt about it. Home Sweet Home, I don't think it's a bad song. I think it might be a little overrated, you know, in their catalog. I think the verses are really cool. The chorus always left me a little flat.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
You know, and you've talked about it before, it's just like, it definitely set a template, though, for what other bands were going to do going forward, because everyone tried to put their Home Sweet Home on their album after that.
Yeah, very influential. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about it before, to where everyone kind of softened their look after that too.
Yes, yep.
Everybody.
Yep.
You know, that was playing this type of music kind of softened their look from a harder edge look to, let's see, maybe put a few colors in there. You know, if you're Kiss, you go overboard with the rainbow colors, but
some pearls.
But anyway, I've got Motley Crue, Theater of Pain at 9. Like I said, I don't hate it, but just I guess because the bad feelings I have towards this album because it was such a come down from the previous two. And I don't know that Motley Crue ever quite got back to those first two albums. Right. They had some decent albums after that, but I don't know that they ever quite came back after this album.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally know what you're saying. I will keep my thoughts of this album. I will hold on my thoughts until it hits my list. So I will jump to my number 9. Which is Ratt, Invasion of Your Privacy. And I think that this album has some of Ratt's best songs. I think You're in Love and Lay It Down are some of their best, and Give It All is great. Even Closer to Your Heart, I think, is a cool, like a slower, moodier track. But I think when you get to the middle of this thing, at least for me, it starts to fizzle out. And they feel like kind of like throwaways. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I don't think the album, the later part, is as strong as the beginning. But in their defense, this is pretty common with a lot of these 80s albums, I think. I think we've got it jam-packed with all our singles and real big, numbers toward the beginning. And then we tend to have some, not so stellar stuff toward the end. And once again, these bands are pumping out material pretty fast, especially when you try to
every year.
Yeah, intermix touring as well. I don't think there's too many people. Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most people think Out of the Cellar, is their masterpiece, and then this, it's kind of hard to follow up something like that. And once again, they had a lot of time to put together those songs, and then this happens to every band. Once the machine gets rolling, you don't have as much time to do the follow up, and then the one after that, and so on and so forth. So I like it. I think it's got some of their coolest tunes and coolest riffs. catchy songs, but I just think it's not as good as Out of the Cellar, and I think we get about midway, and then it kind of loses me. But still, a lot of great stuff on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic, music industry, kind of cliche. Is it? You got your whole life up until your first album to write it.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
You got years to come up with material for your first album, and then you got a couple of months to come up with material for your second album. Unless you're lucky enough to have a big back catalog of songs already ready to go, which some bands do. But a lot of them, I think that was maybe the case with a number of bands where that second album just they just they get that sophomore jinx kind of thing. But really, it's about that they get rushed back into the studio and they're on a deadline and have to push stuff out, whether they feel they have the right enough good material or not. It's like, it doesn't matter. You got to go,
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
But, I think that might be the case with that album, but, I may or may not talk about, have more to say about that later on.
Okay. I kind of figured maybe. So what about your number 8?
My number 8, and see, we're going to run into a similar situation here, I think. But my number 8 is Under Lock and Key by Dokken.
Yeah. Great album.
And something tells me you might have it up a little higher.
Yeah, maybe. I enjoy that album quite a bit. Yeah.
You enjoy some Dokken, now and again. But
who doesn't? Rocking with Dokken, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I grew up. I grew up in a house with 2 older brothers and an older sister, and they were all into this. Into like pretty similar type of music. They're all into 80's metal, 80's rock. And so I heard everything. Everything that came through was just like somebody in the house was playing it. Mm-hmm. And so we had Dokken in our house going all the way back to the first album. We had Breaking the Chains on vinyl. So from Breaking the Chains to Tooth and Nail, and I thought Tooth and Nail was a big jump from the first album.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And truth be told, I'm not the biggest Dokken fan in the world, but it's kind of one of those things where I don't hate it. Like if somebody has it on, I wouldn't be like, "Heck, can you turn that off?" It's like, no, it's not bad. It's good. There weren't like I had like a 2 hands full of like the bands and acts that were like my guys. They're like these are the bands that I go and and kind of all of us in the house had our own little collection of groups that we followed. So, but I remember hearing Under Lock and Key, and I actually went back and listened to it again a few days ago, just so I could, kind of know a little more of what I was talking about. Uh-huh. But I really like the singles on this album. I really like The Hunter. The Hunter is kind of this really cool, like moody, kind of dark almost, kind of mid-tempo, rocker, but it is a kind of an interesting choice for the first single and first video. Mm-hmm. I think they should have went straight with "In My Dreams" as the first single and really kind of announced the album that way.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the other thing. I think this album is heavily weighted towards the singles in my mind, anyway. Mm-hmm. When I listened to it, the songs that stuck out were the singles. It's Not Love, In My Dreams, and the Hunter's a great tune. I just don't think it should have been the first single. I think it's good. I don't think it's as good as Tooth and Nail, and I don't think it's as good as Back for the Attack. But it's still, I still think it's pretty good. Yeah. So, and being not the biggest Dokken fan, so I'm really listening to it objectively when I listen to it. But I felt like it really needed to be in my top 10 just because it's 1985, and you can't have a top 10 from 1985 in metal and not have Dokken on it, right?
It would be a sin, I think, yes.
Yeah, I've got a few other ones on here that people might take issue with, but this one, and if I had put some of those ones on there and not put Dokken on there, people this guy has no idea what he's freaking talking about. But anyway. They might say that anyway.
Yeah, but you know what? I've always been proud of my decisions, and some of them have been unpopular. But you gotta stick to your guns. In the words of Motley Crue, you know what I mean. I feel like you just have to go with your gut and what you like. So no, I'm with you.
Well, that was always me. You know, it's like I took so much heat going to school, and see, people don't know. People think that that you're a Kiss fan, right? Because Kiss is my favorite band. And people think you're a Kiss fan, man. You think everyone likes Kiss, right? No.
No, not back
that
then.
Was not
times where they didn't.
That was not the case in the early '80s, especially. I mean, you got made fun of when you were wearing a Kiss shirt. And I grew up in Southern California. It's like it was not Kiss country. When I was going to school, and. Only someone like me would be brave enough to wear a Paul Stanley. I had a one-night stand with Paul Stanley shirt to school. Okay.
Oh, I remember that shirt. It was a Crazy Nights tour, wasn't it? Was it that?
No. That was his solo tour.
Oh, a solo tour. Oh, I remember it seems like I remember Crazy Nights. There were some cheesy shirts that only had one had Paul.
I had that one too.
Yeah. Okay, I knew I wasn't crazy. That one was.
Like that. That one was. I had a crazy night with Kiss.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I wore that one too, and I got I got the Snickers behind my back and everything too, but I didn't care. I was going to listen to what I was going to listen to, and whether it was popular or not, and. That was me. I wasn't a popular guy anyway, so the hell with it.
Well, I think, speaking of Kiss, my number 8
The Right to Rock
is Keel, Right to Rock. And
I thought you threw me a curveball there. I was about to let you have it.
There's no way I'm putting Asylum that low. Come on now.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm like, no way.
Nope, no way. So, Keel, and anybody who follows me on Twitter, I post a lot about Keel. I love Keel. And I think this album is really good. I definitely prefer when Keel's more commercial, like the 1987 self-titled album. That's my favorite by them. But this one's really good. But I think, as a kid, really cool. I like it, all that good stuff. But I think over the years, I've read more about it, and I've kind of listened to it more and more. And this album, it was really a rush job. When we talk about those rush jobs, if you really dissect this one, a lot of this stuff is rehash songs from the Lay Down the Law album. A lot of these are Kiss reject songs that Gene couldn't get on some of the 80s Kiss albums. So this is a hodgepodge, potpourri of a lot of weird shit. You know what I mean? And, I mean, The Right to Rock, the song itself is amazing. It can carry the whole album. I think Speed Demon is great. The song that I find the most comical, though, even though I love it, it's super catchy. It's Easier Said Than Done. Now, this is a Gene Simmons original, and if you ever read the lyrics to this song, this is like all the Gene-isms, like all these goofy sayings that you could all throw in. Like, the song actually makes no sense. And I think the only point of the song is to throw in every weird, like, saying that's ever been made. Like, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. And he's talking about Russian roulette. And if you can't stand the heat,
he's not talking about putting a log in a fireplace.
No, but he should have, because it's all pretty much. I actually copied and pasted these into notes so I could reference some of this, because I just thought there's no life after death. Read them and weep. You've made your bed. Now you got to go to sleep. I mean, it's the cheesiest. It should be called Cheesier Said Than Done. You know what I mean? It's just like the most goofy sayings, and it's like everything bad about some of the Gene Simmons 80s songs all in one song.
Right.
But for some reason,
all wrapped up in one.
I do like the song. so go figure. I'm a cheeseball too. I think it's a cool, catchy song. But yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of Gene Simmons leftovers. But I do love, there's something about Keel that I love. I like Ron Keel's voice. I like the dual leads. I like the giant choruses. But I feel like, pretty strong effort for like your major label debut. But I think they got better as they went along. I think by the time they got to that 87 album, they were really spot on and in the zone. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but I don't know if Gene has ever added anything to any band he's produced. If he has, I don't know, because it seems like any band, and this isn't a knock, it's just that like any band that he's produced never really made it big. So I almost wonder if he really is the guy that needs to be produced and not be the producer. If you know what I'm trying to say? Like I feel like people like Bob Ezrin and Eddie Kramer maybe got the best out of Gene, and when you just let Gene be Gene, this is where you get this easier said than done kind of goofy shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like he's somebody that needs to be kept in check. So that's why I don't know if he's the greatest producer. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to. He could probably produce something better than I ever could, but I sometimes I question.
But you got to figure too at that time, and Gene was spreading himself so thin.
Right.
He's doing movies. He's producing bands. Oh, and once a year, he's got to go in and crap out like 4 songs for a Kiss album. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Look at Animalize. I mean, Animalize is the prime example of just Gene garbage, nonsense. I don't like any of those songs really that he's got on Animalize. So it's just no. So yeah, you're right. That's kind of what he was doing, and I feel like some of that mindset kind of puked out on the Keel album.
Yeah, I remember Keel when I remember Keel when they were still playing the clubs. Mm-hmm. Like I said, my older siblings used to go to the clubs all the time, and they used to go to this place in Reseda called the Country Club, and it's about maybe a half hour away from where we live. And they bring home all these flyers, from all these bands. And, a few of them you might have even heard of. There are flyers for Keel. Let's see, my sister brought home a flyer from the Vote band. I don't know if you ever heard of them, called Poison.
Yeah, I kind of heard of those guys.
Yeah, and so she'd bring home all these flyers. Oh, yeah, this guy it's probably a guy in a band that handed it to her,
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
And so it was funny having all these flyers laying around our house, and then a year or two later we'd see their video. I remember seeing the Right to Rock video on one of the video shows, and it was just like, oh man, people have a flyer from that.
Man, that's crazy.
I go and pull it out, and sure enough, it's like, I don't even know if the band was the same, but it was Ron Keel. Sure enough, was he about 7 feet tall? I mean, he's a very tall guy, but yeah, I remember Keel. I think the thing but I remember Keel from before Keel. Yeah, I remember Steeler.
Right.
Because my brother was a big Yngwie fan, so he went out and got Steeler out. But so, Ron Keel's voice is, he's got great range.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an acquired taste.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why they weren't bigger. It wasn't that they didn't have the songs or anything else, but maybe just because his voice isn't for everybody.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with you. What about your 7, man?
My number 7. Okay, this kind of goes, a little bit into the, like I said, I needed to punish Twisted Sisters come out and play because of, a couple of bad songs. So I felt like they should be brought down a little bit. This album kind of has a little bit of that for me too. My number 7. Is Down for the Count by Y&T.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And November 1985, and I guess, it wasn't a good single. This is kind of like Twisted Sister, where this is where a lot of Y&T fans kind of jump ship. Mm-hmm. It's a much poppier album. It's got a lot more keyboards than they had previous. But for me, the rock stuff, is really good, and even the keyboardy stuff, it's poppy, kind of more, a little bit more glammy, and I actually like it. A lot of people don't. I like this album. There are a couple of songs that I really can't stand, it's very similar to me. Let's Come Out and Play. There are a couple of songs that I don't like, but thankfully, one of them wasn't released as a single, at least. And being as that you're a Poison fan, I need to ask you a question, Mike. Okay, there's a cover on this album written by Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina, and I just want to know, if your mama don't dance.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do metal bands feel the need to cover the song?
They think it's good, but I'm not sure how many agree. I don't know.
Y&T covered this song for this album. And then it's like, and I thought I was rid of the tune, and then a few years later, I get Poison on my screen singing this same song that I can't stand. and I'm sitting there thinking, why do bands keep covering this song? The original's not even good. But I digress.
With Y&T, like I've been honest about this when people have asked me. I never got into Y&T. The only Y&T album that I ever liked or had was Contagious, because it was 1986. That's when I was really kind of getting into metal and hard rock, and Y&T appeared to be a glam band like all the other ones that I liked at that point. You know what I mean? So that's the only album I've ever really known of. And there's a lot of people like Rich on Twitter who's huge into Y&T, and he sent me some stuff. He's like, check this out. And you know what? it just doesn't. I don't know. I can't relate to it. I don't know why. I'm
guessing Rich jumped off with this album.
Probably, yeah, he probably did. But it's like I don't know. It's like you talk about those acquired tastes. You don't know why you just can't get into something. I know they're not bad. They're good musicians, great songs, and all that stuff. But yeah, it just doesn't register with my ears for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, to me, just like every other Y&T, Dave Meniketti carries this album.
Sure.
For my money, he's the best double threat in the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Between the lead vocals and the smoke and lead guitar. He's just incredible. Even if you don't like his voice, his guitar playing is just incredible. And this was their album where, like I said, they brought in all the keyboards, and it's a much more glammier, poppier album. And I think a lot of the old school Y&T fans didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
They repackaged Summertime Girls and put it on this album. It had been a hit single, and they dropped it on this album. It really doesn't need to be on the album, but if you like Summertime Girls, which I do, and a lot of people don't, but I like Summertime Girls. There's a lot of this album that kind of, has other stuff kind of in that vein. Whereas maybe older Y&T stuff is a little raw or a little more straight ahead rock. Like I said, black keyboards on this, stuff like In the Name of Rock is very heavy and just a good banger of a tune, and maybe because I know you like glammy stuff.
Sure.
Maybe check out if you're going to check out anything off this album, check out Face Like an Angel. Check out Anytime at All. Those are really glammy, and I might send you one of those after we're done here.
Yeah. Yeah, send them over.
And maybe you'll like it, maybe you'll go, eh.
Yeah, I don't have anything against. Like I said, if as long as they're doing the kind of music that I like, like I said,
right.
I love Contagious. You know what I mean? So I might like it.
Yeah, if you like Contagious was kind of a, what started, maybe with this one, maybe the album before in Rock We Trust is a little more accessible. But this one, they ramped up the keyboards more on this album here, Down for the Count. And like I said, a lot of people didn't like it. The album didn't do very well. And this was their last album on A&M, thank God. But by the time they got to, basically, Y&T had a lot of missteps during their career. They were on the wrong label to start with. And then by the time they got to Geffen Records, it was kind of too late.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of younger bands that were already, doing well. But anyway, my number 7 was Down for the Count, Y&T.
So my number 7, you want to talk about an acquired taste when it comes to vocals, and it's Loudness. Thunder in the East. I love Loudness, and I feel like Akira brings in such amazing riffs and solos, and this whole band is stellar. I always look at them like the Japanese Van Halen. You know what I mean? Just it's a stellar band. But I do feel like the vocals are an acquired taste here, but on the flip side, I also feel like there's a certain charm to them, and that's what makes them unique. So a lot of times, like when you insert an American vocalist like Mike Vicera, who I'm a huge fan of, that's maybe more accessible to some people. But I also think you lose the charm of what Loudness is all about. But I mean, the songs and the riffs on this album, Crazy Night, No Way Out, Like Hell, and even there's just some really weird time changes. And I don't know if this is kind of unique to like their culture or like if they've integrated like, you know what I mean? Like American bands are going to have American influences, but Loudness may have American influences plus also Japanese influences. And I was listening to the song Run for Your Life, and it goes along really in a normal pace, and then like after the chorus it goes into this riff that's completely off time and like has a really weird time change. And I was just thinking to myself, like, you just wouldn't hear necessarily like American metal bands doing this at that time. So I just think there's a really Loudness are definitely more than they seem, you know what I mean? And I think like when there are times when Loudness tries to be an American band, like when you listen to like on Lightning Strikes the song Let It Go, like to me that sounds like it could be any hair metal band. But then when you even get into that album, there's some really oddball metal songs on there. They're not your straight, they're not straight ahead stuff. They're pretty complicated, and they do some weird things with the melodies and the time changes. So I think Loudness is just an incredible, underrated band, an incredible band. And that's my 7.
Yeah, I remember Loudness. I remember seeing the video for Crazy Nights, and it was different. It was not to get I mean, just you're watching metal videos. You're used to seeing all American bands, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like they're the Japanese metal band. So it's like that. And that was all we knew, And I remember seeing the Rock and Roll Crazy Nights, and trying to, it's a little, it takes a little, because you're hearing, it's a second language for these guys,
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like you're hearing a real heavy accent, and it's kind of like you're trying to take it seriously, but it's a little hard when you're a teenager trying to get past that, at the time.
Right.
And
Yep.
But they were definitely, it wasn't like it was. I thought it was bad. I never heard the full album, but I just remember the one video, and I remember listening to it. It's not bad. It's just, I guess it's maybe the vocals that are the hardest to kind of try and wrap your head around.
Yep.
When you're an American teenager in the '80s, checking this stuff out for the first time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, but as you become an adult, and you go back and revisit this stuff, your point of view changes. And what I would say, look no further than Klaus Meine. I mean, there's a lot of words that he says that are totally pronounced wrong. But for some reason, you gave him the pass, whatever back in the day, because his voice was so damn good. But I feel like
the band was so good, and the songs were so good.
Yeah, Loudness didn't maybe get that same kind of courtesy. I think, and I think people you said, this guy's got a heavy accent. If you go back and even listen to some of the stuff that's not in English, it's still wicked cool. Like, they've got great, you don't know what they're saying, but it's got cool melodies and cool riffs. Like, they're a talented band. And what I'll do is, you said you want to send me some of the Y&T. I'm going to send you a couple of the tracks on here where I think if you go back now and listen to them today, you'll be like, wow, that's like really ahead of its time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you got for 6?
For number 6, I've got the 1985 offering from Dio, Sacred Heart.
Sweet. Dio. Nice.
Yeah, and, this is another one, kind of an album that seemed to maybe some of Dio's momentum kind of stopped after this album, because this was the last album with Vivian Campbell. Mm-hmm. And, like the first 2 Dio albums it seemed like they were huge. I mean, everyone, at least, where I lived, it seemed like everyone loved Dio, and everyone was cranking up Holy Diver and Last in Line, and everyone really liked Vivian Campbell as a guitar player. And it seemed like, after this album, and with Vivian quit, I don't know if he quit or he's fired, whatever, I don't really remember. But it was like the beginning of the tour, and then by the time they got to America, they had Greg Goldie. Uh-huh. And, but it seemed like that for whatever reason, that seemed to kill some of Dio's momentum, and I don't know that he ever quite, if his popularity, as far as with his solo band, ever quite got to where it was on the previous album. Uh-huh. But this album is really good. I listened. This is another one I went back and listened to just in the last few days, and I was really surprised. I hadn't listened to it in forever. I listened to Holy Diver. I listened to Last in Line, and those albums are great. And I was really surprised. I'm like, why haven't I been listening to this album? It's great. It's a little more, same thing like we're talking about. Everyone's bringing in the keyboards.
Yeah, it's lightened up a little bit. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Dio had keyboards before with Claude Schnell, but it's like it seemed like with this album they were a little more prominent on more of the songs. But stuff like The King of Rock and Roll is just a great heavy tune. The title track, Rock and Roll Children, was really like a catchy kind of, I don't want to say commercial sounding, but definitely a little more melodic, and that was a single. But the rest of the album's got stuff that's a little heavier, Hungry for Heaven was a great tune, Just Another Day. But this album, I think, kind of gets forgotten, when you're talking about the Dio, like the prime Dio years. I think people kind of cut off after Last in Line. Mm-hmm. But I think this one's almost as good.
Yeah, I love Dio, and I'm like one of those Dio weirdos because I feel like when I really started getting into Dio around Dream Evil, and then I really like everything that goes from there on. I had this album when I was a kid, but I don't think I was even really mature enough to understand, like how good Dio really was, But I think I love the song Sacred Heart. I love the live performance where he slays the dragon during that song, and so that's classic. But one point I want to make with Dio, and you said, his popularity kind of went down after this. I don't know if it necessarily has as much to do with music as it has to do with image. And I think what was happening by the time we got to 86 and 87, Bret Michaels, Vince Neil, these are how you're supposed to look. And now you got this little guy who's older, who's starting to thin out on, you know what I mean? Like he didn't, like, you could be like some metal reject, like in the early 80s. Like you could be Udo and it would work, right? Like in the earlier 80s. Like, or Halford.
Right.
But once you got to the late 80s, you needed to be like Pretty Boy, like Sebastian Bach, Janie Lane. So I feel like that was, I think it was image that killed Dio for the most part. I don't think it's not talent and it's not songwriting because he's loaded with that. It's just the way he looked, I think. It unfortunately became really superficial when we got to the end of the 80s, and I don't think he could compete with that. That's just, and I just thought of that right now. I've never thought about that before, but when you were saying
you're right.
I think that's
a lot of bands were having that problem, though. A lot of bands from the early 80s were having that problem. Or like the band I just talked about, Y&T. Y&T had an image problem.
Yes.
In the mid 80s.
Yes. Yep.
Dave, they were kind of able to kind of, he was able to pull it off. Okay. Decent looking guy. He's got the curly hair and everything, and he could they could put some leather on him and kind of make him look, kind of pretty him up a little bit,
Yep.
But the rest of the band not so much. So what ended up happening is, they replaced the drummer, and replaced one of the guitar players to kind of make them look a little prettier,
Yeah, that's like when they brought in DeGrasso for the Contagious and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's different dudes. Yeah, no doubt.
Right.
Yep. No, it's sad that it has to come to that, but it does. That's what happens. So.
Yeah, I mean, we look back at it now and see how ridiculous it was, Right. But it was definitely a thing back then.
Oh yeah. I talked about this before on here, like, I was so superficial. Once again, I was like 10, 11 years old, you know what I mean? And I always remember, like, if a dude in the band had short hair, I would be like, what's wrong with this guy? He should have long hair like the rest of the guys. Where did he come from? He's a loser, like, that was going on in your mind. And as an adult, you're like, this is ridiculous. Like, you judge people by their talent and, like, their merit, not by, like, what their hair looks like. But unfortunately, like I said, that's just was the mindset of everybody. People were wearing wigs so they fit in with what was going on.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was that way, though. It was the same way in my own band. So, I mean, when we would have an opening, we'd be looking for a bass player or drummer. I mean, if they walked in the door and didn't look right, it was just like, okay, let's just get this over with.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? It's so terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah. And it's bad, because it really it doesn't have much to do with anything,
No.
But you'd be naive to think that it wasn't important back then because it was, unfortunately.
Yeah. So number 6, I've got Yngwie, man, Marching Out. And This is I feel like this is Yngwie kind of. I feel like at this point, Yngwie's still trying to be commercial to an extent. You know what I mean? He's playing some fast metal on a lot of these songs, but I think he hasn't gone overboard yet. You know what I mean? I feel like, Jeff Scott Soto brings a lot of, relevance to these songs, and he's got the Johanssons on there playing with him. But, I'm a Viking is great. I'll See the Light Tonight. Caught in the Middle is such a cool song. And I just feel like, Yngwie, aside from his name not being overly marketable, I guess I think I would have named myself, like a Nikki Sixx type of a name.
You look at it and you're trying to read it, as an American, you're looking at what's it, Yngwie? What is this?
Right.
It's like we don't know.
It's weird. I mean, he did become a guitar hero with a crazy name. It didn't really matter because he had the talent. But I think when you talk about like radio and video, I always believe his band should have just been called Rising Force, and that's the end of it. You know what I mean?
Completely agree.
No Yngwie Malmsteen, because once again, I'm not trying to rip on somebody's culture or what, any of that kind of stuff.
No.
But I just feel like you are in America, and it is the 80s, and I think you just got to be accessible. You know what I mean? If you want to be huge. If you don't want to be huge, then yes, call it Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. But if you want to be big, you just need a straightforward name. Motley Crue, Poison, Kiss. It just has to be simple.
Right.
So, yeah. But I'm a huge Yngwie fan. Once again, this we talked right when we started. This is not my favorite Yngwie album. I actually liked it when he got even more commercial. But then again, that tends to be my theme with all these. I like when they went real commercial and glammed out, But I still I love this album. I think it's great. The playing, the songs, and I feel like that's the problem with Yngwie nowadays, or maybe within the past 10, 15 years. It's all about noodling and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like at the end of the day,
he's not even working with a singer anymore.
No,
right?
he doesn't. He sings his own. That's a whole other subject I'm just going to leave untouched. But yeah. But I feel like when he was more focused on his songs, the other it all came together. But now when we're just focusing on soloing and stuff, then there is no real song there. So at least that's my take on it. But I'm always going to love Yngwie. Always going to be one of my favorites.
Yeah, Yngwie was another one that was popular in my house. One of my brothers was he just was so into Yngwie, and then got into all those Shrapnel Records, virtuoso guitar players. He had Vinnie Moore, Tony McAlpine. If they played fast, my brother went and got the album. Mm-hmm. But his favorite was Yngwie, and he saw him in concert several times. And we had that one in our house too. It was never my thing, but some of the songs were. I'm more of a song, I'm more about the music. I'm more about songs,
Me too.
And to me, his music was always, okay, let me write a song so I have a vehicle for my soloing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Whereas, my train of thought in the school I come from is the complete opposite.
Yep.
I played, when I played myself, it was always, okay, I'm going to do a solo to work with the song. How can I make add something to this song, not overpower it or, put my stamp all over it kind of thing. But, there are plenty of guitar players that to where it's about them and it's about their lead guitar playing. And I guess, with a lot of people, when they were going to see Yngwie, they wanted to hear him solo. But you were only going to get so big doing that. You were going to have your niche, and that was about it. You were never going to really break through. The closest he got to breaking through was with Joe and Turner. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know what the sales were for those albums, but it seemed like that album was, did better than some of the other ones. But, I definitely appreciate Yngwie's talent, though.
Yeah. Well, we're getting down.
And that was one of my that was one of my honorable mentions, so I don't have to worry about mentioning that one.
Well, we're getting down to the nitty gritty, man. We're getting to our final 5. What's your 5?
All right, I'm going to number 5. I normally would stray away from, say, greatest hits albums or live albums, really, but I love every song on this album, so I had to put it on here. Making the second appearance on my list, it's Y&T with Open Fire.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. This is a live album. mostly live. There's one studio song, and I think one live song that may have been recorded in the studio. But it's I love everything on this album. It starts off with the killer Open Fire, and the versions of the songs on this are better than the studio versions from the previous album. And this actually was the album that Summertime Girls made its first appearance. Because it was a studio song that made yeah, I've got 2 albums on here, and the big single, the only song that anyone remembers from these 2 albums, it's the same song. And again, A&M Records had no idea what they were doing. It's like, okay, this song's hit. Let's put it on. Okay, we'll put it on the live album, and then the next studio album that we're rushing to put out. Let's put Summertime Girls on that one too. My guess is the band was not. I'm guessing that it was not their idea, but anyway, you've got Open Fire, 25 Hours a Day, Rescue Me, Forever is a great classic Y&T track, and this live version of it it's my favorite version of the song. And there's only 8 tunes on it, and it's about 48 minutes or so. But I love it from start to finish. So I had to put it on my list just because I love the album that much. There's nothing I don't like on this album.
Hey, anything goes on these, man. There's no rules.
Yeah. The only thing that the only criticism I would make of this album is that it wasn't longer. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, just from a marketing standpoint, okay, Y&T, just to give you a little thing, Y&T is coming off their biggest album to date in Rock We Trust. That's the album that had Don't Stop Running and Lipstick and Leather, and from a sales standpoint, that was their high water mark. So they put out a live album the next year that completely ignores the album that had just been a hit. Yeah. There's no songs from the Rock We Trust on this live album, and there's no Mean Streak on it either. And that was the stuff that was the most popular of this band. And I guess they wanted to push their back catalog. I don't know. But I mean, it's all great stuff, but you could have done a double live album and put some of the newer hits on there as well, and it would have made it that much better. But that's just my own little criticism. For what it is, I love the album. That's my number 5.
Sweet. My number 5. Is Striper, Soldiers Under Command. And I love this album. I think it's either this or To Hell with the Devil is my favorite. They're almost tied for number 1, but I love the title track. And I feel like there's just, for a band that's, this was their second album, they're really young guys, I feel like they've really got some well-written songs on this one. Especially the song First Love. It's like a ballad, and it's a really well-written song, very mature song. And Together Forever's fun. Waiting for a Love That's Real. I'm a big Striper guy, man. I love their message. Right. I love their musicianship, the vocals, their harmonies they do. I don't know. I feel especially those first 4 or 5 albums that they did. I love it. Striper's good fun, and that's my 5.
Yeah, I remember when Striper first came out too, and that was another band that we had a flyer for when they were playing the country club in Reseda in Southern California. And I'm guessing their first EP I think was out around that time. It was around '84.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so they were playing the country club, and then my sister had seen them, and she was, yeah, this band, they were throwing out little Bibles at their show.
That was different.
these little paperback little Bibles. And then I remember when the video for Soldiers Under Command came out, and sure enough, they showed them it might even be the country club, but they're at a club they showed them throwing out to the audience. It's just like, wow, that's different. I'm listening to stuff that's the complete opposite, from that. Antithesis of that, either music. Yep. But, I just got done listening to the single of Wasp, Animal, and, I wasn't going to be popping on Striper after that. But, but Striper was never really, one of my bands, but, it's kind of another thing. Another band will come on and they're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. It just wasn't my thing. But definitely, there were some bands that I would see and I would be like, okay, this band is just not good. They don't have any talent. That wasn't the case with Stryper. It's like I saw them. Definitely, these are talented musicians. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, totally understand. What do you got for 4? Now this is really getting down to the nitty gritty. What's 4?
All right, 4, and I know you don't have this on your list.
Mine is so my final 4 is so predictable. It's not even funny.
Yeah, my top 3 are very predictable to anyone that knows me at all. But number 4 is okay. Nobody has this on their list outside of Detroit. Okay, but my number 4 is the self-titled debut by Seduce.
Oh, I remember you saying something about Seduce. I thought maybe it seems like I've seen that on your page or something. So yeah, I've heard of them, but I'm not familiar with their music.
Yeah, they ended up on the Decline of Western Civilization 2, the metal years. A few years later, they put out 2 albums. They had one major label release on IRS, and my guess is it didn't do that well. But this is a few years before they were on, in the movie and everything. And this is their debut. It's only 8 songs, and it's only about 30 minutes long. But I mean, from 1 to 8, I mean, it's just a banging, hardcore album. This band, just never hit it big for whatever reason. And like I said, the biggest they got was being in that movie, and then they put out the one major label release. But this was put out independently in 1985, and I love this album. I didn't get it until years later, but me and the guy who was in the band with at that time, we put it on, and we're just like, man, how was this not huge? How did somebody else not pick up on this? I mean, they looked really glammy. They had hair up to the moon, but they're playing really heavy stuff at this point. They had songs called like Viper's Bite, Love to Hate. There's another great song called Face to Face. My favorite song is called Chopping Block, and it's just really heavy stuff. The singer, Mark Andrews, he's got a really unique voice, so it might not be, everyone's cup of tea, but I love it. I think he sounds great. And the guitar player, David Black, might be like one of the better guitar players from that era that nobody's heard of, because they didn't hit it big. But that's my number. What am I at? 4. My number 4 is the Seduce self-titled album. I think it's on streaming services now. So, for anyone who wants to check it out, go check it out.
I'm gonna have to check it out too, because I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard of them. So I'm gonna have to get schooled on some Seduce.
Yeah, go check it. It might not be your thing, but
yeah.
It might be a little heavier than some of the glammier stuff we're talking about. But
yeah. All right, so this was one you figured would be on my list, my number 4, and it is, and it's Dokken, Under Lock and Key, and I love it, and I think this and Back for the Attack, they're my faves. Once again, as much as I appreciate the first couple Dokken albums, I feel like this is where it really starts for me, and then the Back for the Attack, I love those 2. I think Unchained the Night, that was one you didn't mention. I think that's like their best song. For me, it's like probably one of my favorite Dokken songs. I love the clear guitar in the beginning, and then it gets heavy, and it's so good. Lightning Strikes too, one of Dokken's best. I love that song. In My Dreams and Hunter, I agree with you on the Hunter. Very cool. It's not love, but I feel like to the average person, this album probably feels the same exact way that Invasion of Your Privacy feels to me. Like it kind of gets sluggish at the end. But I like all those songs.
Right.
I must be just some kind of weirdo, but I like Jaded Heart and Will the Sun Rise. I just think they're cool songs. So for me, I pretty much, Until the Living End is the last track. I love this whole album. I get it that it's at its strongest at the beginning, but I still think it's got some pretty cool deep tracks, and I love Don's voice, and obviously George's playing. But kind of to your point, I'm the same exact way. I don't go crazy about guitar solos, so I know that there's something there that sounds good, but I don't sit there and just like study George Lynch's solos or Warren DeMartini's solos. I know these are guys that people go crazy over, but I'm more of a song guy too. I like, I want a good song, and I feel that everything he does fits, but I don't sit there and analyze it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, I'm both kind of because I love great guitar solos. They don't have to necessarily be like really overly fast.
Sure.
But I love great guitar solos. But I like it in context of a good song.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
It's more of a spice than the main ingredient. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. What do you got for 3? I'm dying to hear what your final 3 are.
Oh, well, number 3, we've got a nice flow going here. Because at number 3, I've got Ratt, Invasion of Your Privacy.
Oh, here we go. Ratt finally popped up on yours. All right, let's hear what your thoughts are on it.
My thoughts are when again, it seemed like there's a similar story with a lot of these groups that were putting out their second albums, like we talked about. And I loved Out of the Cellar. Loved it. To me, it's a 10 out of 10 album.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I absolutely love the EP too.
Yep.
The first EP I think is so cool. It's really raw and it's a little heavier. And so I was waiting for Invasion of Your Privacy to come out. Went and bought it right when it came out. First thing, you look at the album cover, and that doesn't suck. But I put it on, and I'm kind of listening to it, and okay, You're in Love was a great tune.
Yeah.
And then Lay It Down was great. And I'd already heard that. And then the rest of the songs were just kind of there,
Yeah.
And really, I went back to it a few times and kept trying to get into it, and I really just didn't for a long time. And it's really only been as I've gotten older that I went back and listened to this album, and I'm going, this is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It took years, but it's really kind of grown on me. And now I probably think that it's not quite as good as Out of the Cellar, but it's as good, because originally I actually liked the follow-up Dancing Undercover better than this album. And now, now listening to it, I probably like this album a little better.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, You're in Love's great. Lay It Down is a great tune. Between the Eyes, I always love that one. And the rest of the stuff, it's just consistently good. Mm-hmm. In my eyes, from start to finish, it's not. I wouldn't put everything as being A+ like I do with Out of the Cellar, but I think you've got a few A's and a lot of B's on this material, and I mean B as in like on a grading scale where A, B, C.
Mm-hmm.
So B's still pretty good in my eyes. And the guitar work, I think this was DeMartini's album, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think he kind of like stepped to the forefront a little bit and kind of, pushed Robin Crosby off to the side a little bit, for better or worse, which is kind of sad for him, but, I mean, you can't argue with the results on this because the guitar playing is so good on this album.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's my number 3, Ratt, Invasion of Your Privacy.
Well, I know that my number 3 is definitely in your number 2, I'm assuming. So, from what I know about you. But and I just want to say that this was the hardest part of it. I think everything else fit into place, but once I got to like 1, 2, 3, it was a fair game for anybody.
I'm blind in Texas.
But ultimately,
yeah, I had trouble with 1 and 2.
Yeah, unfortunately, for better or for worse, WASP ends up at 3, The Last Command. And I gotta say, though, this probably is my favorite WASP album. I know so many people love the debut, and I do too. I mean, I love a lot of their albums a lot, especially Headless Children as well. But I feel like this one is just fun, well-written, catchy stuff, jack action, ball crusher, cries in the night, fistful of diamonds, and I just think it's great. I mean, Wild Child is a good song. I mean, it's a great song, but I feel like it's just, I'm so burnt out with that song. But the other songs I'm not burnt out with. I feel like they don't ever get enough attention. That whole first side is full of great tunes that don't get a lot of attention. And even the second side is no slouch. Running Wild in the Streets and The Last Command and Sex Drive, all that. I mean, it's just all around. Oh, I can't forget Blind in Texas. But once again, those are the ones that you've kind of heard a lot, between the Wasp live stuff and everything, and on their greatest hits. But yeah, everybody swears by the debut, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but I think this is a little bit more my speed. It's more catchier. It's a little bit more produced, and it's right up my alley. And I know you're a big Blackie fan. I'm a big Blackie fan, and I love Chris Holmes and Randy Piper's guitar work together. Steve Riley is a kick-ass drummer. This could potentially be their best lineup on this album. So yeah, Last Command, man. I got nothing more to say about it. It's awesome.
I always thought you were cool, Mike, but you kind of up the you up that a little bit on my cool meter.
Yeah,
I've been flying the Wasp flag for so many years, and usually I get met with kind of
yeah, they're idiots. They don't know what they're talking about.
No, I mean, normally it's like, yeah, Wasp, whatever, Blackie Lawless. And I'm usually you don't understand. You need to listen to them more.
Yeah, for sure.
You just haven't listened to enough Wasp. That's your problem.
Yep. There's something about, like I said, for me, I'm going to be completely honest, there's a major drop-off for me after the Headless Children. Like, I start to feel like he made the same album, like, over and over again. And maybe that's just an opinion that I'm alone on, but I feel like there's a real evolution when you go from the debut to the Headless Children. They're all different. When you look at the Electric Circus, that one's a little bit more glammy, the look and the sound, and then we got really deep and heavy and serious with the Headless Children. I just love all the different places they went, and I love how the partnership of like Holmes and even with Johnny Rod. I just feel like all those guys brought some cool elements, and then I feel like once it really wasn't a band anymore, then I feel like something was lost. Blackie's solid. He writes great songs and he's a great singer, but I really think he needs those other guys from the original lineups in those first few albums to really make the Wasp the Wasp sound that I like. So that's just my take on it.
Well, a lot of the Wasp sound that from the original band, and particularly on the first couple of albums, it's a lot of Chris Holmes. To be quite honest,
it really is.
And it's not so much from a writing standpoint. He did co-write some stuff, but it's something about the sound of his guitar. I mean, he's not the best guitar player in the world, but there's something about the tone of his guitar that kind of completes that Wasp sound.
Yeah.
And once he left, it's like I like a lot of the later Wasp albums also, but sonically it's not the same.
No.
I like a lot of the songs, but just sonically it's just not the same sound, and it's definitely missing Chris Holmes in the mix.
Yep.
But you know how it is. It's like it's the same thing with people that want Ace back in Kiss. It's like
exactly.
Yeah, I understand. It's like his guitar kind of gives that signature Kiss sound, but it's like, I don't have to live with these guys 24/7.
That's the piece we don't understand.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been in bands with people I couldn't stand and had to deal with them all the time. It's just like, oh, man. And then when they were out of the band, someone would come up to you and say, man, what happened to so-and-so? It's like, well, things didn't work out. Oh, man, why'd you do that? Like, that guy was the best drummer. And it's dude, you don't got to deal with him every day. And so I understand that part of it too, but anyway, I may or may not have some more to say about that.
I'm sure. So what do you got for number 2?
For number 2, I gotta laugh. Man, I really had trouble with these last two. I knew what the top 2 were going to be, and I had the hardest time making up my mind which one to put in number 2. One of them's from my favorite band, and the other one I just think is a slightly better album. So, number 2.
In your case, I get the feeling you're genuinely happy with the new Asylum album, which is just out in the States now.
Well, I think we're real excited because what you're always trying to do is make your latest record your best record, in the same way that an athlete's always trying to outdo himself, but, let's say somebody jumps 15 feet, it doesn't necessarily mean that the next time they're going to jump 15.5 or whatever. So, but in this case, I really think this is probably our best album.
I've got Kiss Asylum.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's surprising that it seems like lately there seems to be like this album's kind of gotten there's been like a resurgence of love for this album in recent years among the Kiss community, which is surprising because it seemed like everyone kept telling me that all the 80s Kiss stuff was crap for years, and now it's like, oh, but Asylum's good. It's like, well, where were you in '85 when people were making fun of me for my Asylum shirt? But I think it's a great album. I think Paul does his normal Paul stuff in the '80s, where it's like his stuff's great, it's top notch, and I think Gene's stuff is better on this album than Animal Life. I don't feel like he totally just crapped out some songs. He at least put, I think, a little effort into it, maybe, or at least more than he did on Animal Life.
I agree.
You've got A King of the Mountain, which is great, with the late, great Eric Carr on drums. Who Wants to Be Lonely is still one of my favorite Kiss tunes ever. I mean, I think it's great. Absolutely love the chorus. I'm Alive, Tears Are Falling. I'm one of those weirdos that likes All Night,
Me too.
Yeah. Yes, I know it's stupid. It's like, yes, I know to write a song and write down all night is completely juvenile, and it's not to be taken seriously. But if you haven't been in a bar or at a party and people are having a good time, and this comes over the loudspeakers, if you haven't been there and experienced that, it's awesome. Everyone gets into that and starts singing along with it. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's a party song. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's a party tune. And I think some of Gene's stuff is good too, like Trial by Fire.
Yeah.
I always liked. Secretly Cruel is good. On a side note with this album, around the time when this album came out, just to tell you a little story. I was having some, like a lot of young people, I was having some difficulties in school around this time, and just with life in general, I was having some problems. And a friend of the family worked at a clothing store in Beverly Hills, and this had to have been around either late '85, early '86. And he's working at this store, and it's kind of an upscale clothing place. And who walks in but all four members of Kiss?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Paul, Gene, Bruce, Eric, and, he obviously went and helped them, and they bought a bunch of clothes and whatever. And, he kind of, as they were, getting ready to leave, he kind of, this guy, I won't say his name, but I don't remember which one of them that he talked to, but he's like, I know a kid who's kind of, he's one of your biggest fans, and he's kind of having, having some problems, it's like, and they're like, okay, well, we're getting ready to hop on a plane in the next few days, but he's like, give me your address, and we'll see what we can do. And then sure enough, he comes to the house, this friend of ours comes to the house around, I want to say March, and hands me this package, and it's from the Kiss Company.
Wow.
And it's a big envelope, and it's got got the Kiss logo on it, and it's got the address of the office. And inside it was a tour book, from a big Asylum tour book, an autographed picture of the band, and a handwritten letter from Eric Carr.
Wow.
If you can believe that.
That's sweet, man.
And yeah, I mean, and I don't think I don't tell too many people the story just because it's that personal to me. And to make it short, basically what he wrote on it was that, hey Tony, how's it going? Hey man, you got to keep your head up and that kind of thing. He's like, I played in bar bands for however many years. He's like, hoping to get a break. He's like, and I got my break with Kiss. He's like, he's all giving up and not caring is not going to help. And just, whatever you do, stick to it and, make your dreams happen kind of thing. And signed by Eric Carr.
Wow.
And it's still, it's on Kiss stationery, It's got the logo up on the top. And I kept it in a frame for years, and then finally I had to kind of put it away because it was fading. But, yeah, so I kind of have a bit of a soft spot for this album for that reason. And because I have the tour book, I have the autograph picture from the press kit from this tour, and the letter from Eric Carr. So, obviously I was devastated when he passed. But not to bring down the room here, but it's actually this is actually a happy story because it actually really helped me through a kind of a dark time in my life when I was a kid.
That's an amazing story.
Yep, I went back to school. I turned around. I graduated, and the rest is history.
Sweet, man. That is super, super cool. I'm not going to wait to talk about this album because I'm going to talk about it anyway, so we might as well just get it out of the way. But this was the first Kiss album I ever bought, and so that's why it's always going to be special to me. And this is, right when I was getting into hard rock and heavy metal, and, I got it in 86. But, today it's still an enjoyable listen. And you're right, people today are realizing that this album is pretty good. And I think what's cool about it is it has a little bit more of the classic Kiss vibe, a little bit more than any of the other albums before it. And I feel like All Night is a prime example of that. So when you listen to All Night, go listen to Tomorrow and Tonight. And you know what I mean? You're going to hear some similarities there because there's that old Kiss fun vibe is there. And you hear it in other spots of the album too. Don't get me wrong, they're playing the 80's game, with Tears Are Falling and Who Wants to Be Lonely. But they're really good songs. And I think adding Kulick was really a great move because, we talk about how Ace made Kiss a signature sound, gave them that sound in the 70s. I think Kulick did that for the 80s. So I feel like when you're starting to get a vibe of something that's unique. When you go back and you listen to, especially Mark St. John is a prime example, there's nothing unique there. There's nothing that really stands out. It doesn't really fit. But when Kulick comes in, he's got a lot of that speed, but he's tasteful. And, when you think of the solo for Tears Are Falling, you can remember that. You could hum that. You know what I mean? The Mark St. John stuff, all you can do is, it's like a babbling turkey or something. You know what I mean? So, And
like Gene said you sound like an angry bee.
Angry bee. It's in the extreme close-up, yeah. And Simmons, you're right. He's more focused here. His songs are better. Trial by Fire is one of my favorite 80's Gene songs. And, King of the Mountain is great. Obviously, Eric Carr going crazy in the intro there. And I love this album. I said it was my first Kiss album. And you can still go back to it and listen to it today. And, I guess I'll reveal after where I ended up putting it because this could only be one or two. so I guess I might as well just say what my 2 is, and it's not Kiss Asylum. So that just reveals that it's my number 1, but my number 2.
I'm a dreamer, but my heart's a
was, same deal, Motley Crue, Theater of Pain. That was my first Crue album. I understand why people don't like Theater of Pain. I get it. I can understand why people think it's not the greatest Crue album. But I think for me, it's the nostalgia, the memories. I think we've already talked about it, and I've said this before and other things, is that, the sound and the look were kind of the blueprint for the rest of the 80's and the rest of the bands. And I think Home Sweet Home is a cool ballad, and it's just one of those ones where I think anytime I hear it, I don't get sick of it, and I feel like a lot of their songs are like that. Looks to Kill is like that for me. Looks That Kill can come on, and I don't ever get sick of it, and I don't ever get sick of Home Sweet Home. And there's a couple, I do like Louder Than Hell, but there's this little pocket toward the end of the album that really stands out to me, and it's Use It or Lose It, Save Our Souls, and Fight for Your Rights. I think those songs are so cool. They're totally underappreciated, and but I think those are more a little bit heavier and darker. Save Our Souls is kind of a dark song. It's like a slow heavy, and it has some kind of dark lyrics. And I think socially conscious is Fight for Your Rights. They're talking about a lot of deeper stuff than the usual fare of, sleeping with girls and all that stuff. So I love, like I said, it's mostly because of when I got it, the effect it had on me when I bought it, and that's probably why I like it so much. But I'll always be a fan, man. I'll probably always put that as probably my third favorite Crue album. You know what I mean? Just because I always will say the first two are the best. I agree with you 100%. But I think for nostalgic reasons, this one always will rate high with me.
Yeah, a lot of people like this album. It's it's usually polarizing. It's like people either really love that album or kind of look at it like I do. It was kind of the beginning of the end kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen Nikki Sixx gives interviews and he'll say one thing in one interview and then say something completely different in the next one. The one interview I saw to where he must have just been in a mood that day or something, but he's like, yeah, I hate that album.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a piece of crap. He's like, it sounds like a tired band. And he's like, I didn't have any good songs. And then I saw another interview with him a couple years later, and he was a little bit more complimentary of it. So I don't think it's a piece of crap. I just don't think it was just such a come down for me from the first two albums.
Right.
Like I said, it's not bad. I don't hate the album, but man, I tried so many times to get into that album. I kept going back to it and kept going back to it. Like I talked about Invasion of Your Privacy, that I kept going back to it, and eventually it kind of clicked. And so I kept waiting for Theater of Pain to click, and it just never did for me.
That's the way it goes, man.
Right.
So I've already spoiled my number one. I figured the time was right. My number one was Kiss Asylum. So I think I know what your number one is, but tell everybody what it is.
Well, you knew I wasn't going to leave this off my list, right?
Oh, I knew this was going to be high for you. I knew it.
Yes. Well, like I said, it was very close.
This new album, which I love, The Last Command, is a little different from the first, and in fact, for what would be called a heavy band, is quite different. There's a whole stack of different instruments in there. You, in fact, play how many? 12 on the
I played 14 different.
14. And one of those is a sitar.
Sitar, yeah.
Who taught you that?
Myself.
Yeah?
It's called necessity.
Right.
What we wanted to do was create a record that had never been done in heavy rock before.
My number one, of course, is The Last Command by Wasp. I love the album. I think it's a great, especially for a second album. I think it's just a great follow-up to the first album, which I think is their best album. I still think that the first album is their best album. And The Last Command is a very worthy follow-up to that album. I think how I say it, it's not, listening to it, it's not overly commercial sounding in the way we think of as being 80s commercial sounding. But it's definitely a little more accessible, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Even with songs like Ball Crusher.
Right, it's a head scratcher, but yeah, you're right.
And you gotta put it in the context of, okay, I was 12 years old when I got this album. Actually, let me correct that. I just turned 13 when this album came out. So I'm 13 years old, and any 13-year-old young male is going to love a song like Ball Crusher.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
At least in the 80s. You're listening to this going, man, this is the coolest stuff ever.
I agree.
But anyway, Wild Child is awesome. I like Ball Crusher, Fistful of Diamonds, Jack Action, Widowmaker. Blind in Texas is not my favorite song on the album, but it's cool.
It's fun, yeah.
Cries in the Night, I know you like the song. A lot of people don't like that song for some reason. But I always liked it. I always thought it was cool. It's a rehash of an older song that Blackie had called Mr. Cool.
Mr. Cool, yep.
And that actually goes back all the way back to when he was, back to the Killer Kane days with Arthur Kane. And there's I think you can probably find it on YouTube, the original Killer Kane version of Mr. Cool. And the verses are exactly the same as this song, but the chorus on Cries in the Night I think is much better. I think the rewrite is better. Blackie himself prefers Mr. Cool, but I like Cries in the Night better. Last Command, the title track, that's always been one of my favorite tunes on this album. Running Wild in the Streets. Sex Drive is just a fun, dirty song.
Nope. Yep.
And that's another one that goes back to, you know, his older bands. But I think the album's great. But one of the songs that didn't make the album then, that was a B-side called Savage, is also a great tune. If you haven't heard that one, I'm sure you can find it. It didn't make this album. If it had been on the next album, it might have been the best song on the next album because, you know, like we've talked about, there's a big step down on the next album, I think.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it just doesn't have the songs. They sound tired. You know, Blackie sounds tired on Electric Circus, but
yeah.
And he said the same thing. So, you know, so I felt vindicated when Blackie himself said, "Yeah, sounds like a tired band."
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you've got the first two Wasp albums. They kind of went down a little bit in my eyes with Electric Circus, but went way back up with the Headless Children. I think it's just a phenomenal album.
Yeah. Yep.
But I still love this album. It's aged well for me. You know, some albums you like when they first come out, and you go back and listen to them years later and go, oh, maybe it's not that great. To me, I listen to this album and go, man, this album still does it for me.
It does. It has aged very well. I agree 100%.
Yeah, the production's good. Spencer Proffer produced this one. Spencer Proffer produced Mental Health for Quiet Riot. And, you know, I think he did a good job on this album, too. But anyway, that's my number one, Wasp, Last Command. And we can now talk about what was my number two. Take it away.
No, I'm good. I said everything I had to say about Kiss Asylum, so I think everything's been said. It was my first one, and I'm always going to love it. And like I said, a lot of these that we talked about tonight were some of the first albums that I bought by some of my favorite bands, so they're always going to be high on my list no matter what. But that's all I got, man. This was fun. We had a lot. I think this has probably been one of the closest lists that I've had with anybody, because a lot of them, so I've had some people on that have really thrown some weird curveballs out there, and but aside from Seduce, I think yours were all pretty straightforward, and we definitely lined up quite a bit, probably more than anybody they've ever had on. So hats off to you, Tony. You got good taste, man.
Well, this was fun, man.
Yeah, man.
Thanks a lot, man.
Well, Tony, thank you, sir. Have a good night. Well, that was great talking some 1985 metal with Tony. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and go back and look at the past episodes. Tons of killer stuff for you to enjoy. Rock on!